Have you ever pictured King Arthur? The shining armor, the magnificent castle of Camelot, the legendary sword Excalibur pulled from a stone. For centuries, this image has captured our imaginations. But what if I told you that the King Arthur we all know and love, the one with Lancelot, Guinevere, and the quest for the Holy Grails, almost entirely a work of fiction? The real question, the one that has baffled historians for over 1,000 years, is not whether the legends are true, but whether there was a real man behind them. Today, we repealing back the layers of myth to find the historical truth of Britain's most famous king. To find the real Arthur, we need to travel back in time, way before the age of knights and chivalry. We need to go to the 5th and 6th centuries, a period often called the Dark Ages. After the Roman Empire abandoned Britain around the year 410 AD, the island fell into chaos. Roman British society was under constant attack from invading Anglo-Saxons from the east and Picts and Scots from the north. It was a brutal, desperate time, a far cry from the romanticized world of Camelot. And it's in this dark, violent period that the first whispers of a great leader emerge. The earliest mention of a figure named Arthur doesn't come from a grand epic poem, but from a Welsh text called Why Gododin, written around the year 600, an essay poem mourning a group of British warriors who died in a heroic but disastrous battle. In one line, the poet praises a warrior by saying he was a great fighter, but he was no Arthur. Think about that. Even back then, Arthur was already the gold standard for heroism, the benchmark against which all other warriors were measured. This single line suggests a real, famous warrior whose reputation was legendary. But it gives us no details, no story, just a name synonymous with incredible bravery. A couple of centuries later, around the year 830, a Welsh monk named Nennius gives us something more substantial in his work, the Historia Britanum, or History of the Britons. Nennius lists 12 battles fought by a magnificent commander, a dux bellorum, which means leader of battles. This leader, he says, was Arthur. He fought alongside the kings of the Britons, but he himself was the supreme commander. The final and most decisive battle on this list is the Battle of Badon Hill, where Arthur allegedly single-handedly killed over 900 men, securing a period of peace for the Britons that lasted for a generation. This account is tantalizing. It sounds like history. But there's a problem. Nennius was writing 300 years after these events were supposed to have happened. He was compiling stories and oral traditions, not documenting contemporary events. The numbers are clearly exaggerated. One man killing 960 enemies is the stuff of legend, not a battlefield report. So, while Nennius gives us a military leader named Arthur, he mixes potential historical fragments with mythic hyperbole. It's a clue, a powerful one, but it's not proof. So if Arthur wasn't a king in a shining castle, who might he have been? The leading theory is that he was a Romano-British general. Remember, the Romans had ruled Britain for nearly 400 years. When they left, their culture, language, and military tactics didn't just disappear overnight. Many of the native Britons were Romanized. The name Arthur itself is thought to derive from the Roman family name Artorius. This theory paints a picture of a skilled professional soldier, possibly from an aristocratic Roman-British family, trained in Roman methods of warfare. He wasn't fighting for a crown, but for the survival of his people and their way of life against the invading forces. He would have led a mobile, highly trained cavalry force, striking hard and fast against larger but less disciplined Saxon armies. This Artorius figure is the most plausible candidate for the historical Arthur, a warlord, a defender, a last bastion of Roman civilization in a collapsing world. Another piece of the puzzle comes from a different Welsh text, the Annal Cambria, or the Welsh Annals. This text gives us two specific dates. The first entry, for the year 516, notes the Battle of Badon, in which Arthur carried the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ on his shoulders for 3 days and 3 nights, and the Britons were the victors. The second, for the year 537, states, the strife of Camelot, in which Arthur and Medrawd fell. This is huge. Not only does it corroborate the Battle of Badon, but it gives us Arthur's final battle, Camelot, and introduces a character named Medrawd, who later becomes the treacherous Mordred in the legends. It even gives us an apparent date for Arthur's death. But again, we have to be cautious. These annals were compiled much later, and the dates might have been added retrospectively to fit a narrative. We're still walking a tightrope between history and myth. So, how did we get from a gritty 6th century warlord to the noble king of medieval romance? The transformation began in earnest in the 12th century, thanks to a writer named Geoffrey of Monmouth. In 1136, he published his History of the Kings of Britain. This book was a medieval bestseller, but history is a very generous term for it. Geoffrey took the vague references to Arthur and spun them into a full-blown life story. Suddenly, Arthur is a powerful king of all Britain. He has a magical sword, Caliburnesta, precursor to Excalibur. He has a wise advisor named Merlin. He conquers half of Europe and even defeats the Roman emperor. Geoffrey essentially created the framework of the Arthurian legend we know today. He wasn't trying to deceive people. He was creating a national epic, a heroic founding story for Britain. From Geoffrey's foundation, the legend exploded. French poets in the 12th and 13th centuries added the most famous elements. A writer named Chrétien de Troyes introduced the concept of Camelot, the affair between Sir Lancelot and Queen Guinevere, and the quest for the Holy Grail. These themes of courtly love, chivalry, and Christian mysticism resonated deeply with the medieval aristocracy. The story was no longer about a desperate warlord fighting for survival. It was about a perfect king presiding over a perfect court, a romantic ideal of knighthood and honor. Arthur became a vessel for the values and aspirations of a completely different era. Finally, in the 15th century, an English knight named Sir Thomas Malory, who was writing from prison, gathered all these disparate stories, the Welsh traditions, Geoffrey's history, the French romances, and compiled them into one epic volume, La Mort d'Arthur, or The Death of Arthur. This is the version that has defined our modern understanding of the legend. Malory's work gave us the definitive story of the rise and fall of the Round Table, from Arthur pulling the sword from the stone to his final tragic battle with Mordred, and his journey to the mystical Isle of Avalon to be healed of his wounds, promising to one day return when Britain needs him most. So, who was the real King Arthur? The truth is, there was likely no King Arthur. There was no Camelot, no Round Table, in the way we imagine it, and almost certainly no Holy Grail. But buried deep beneath a mountain of myth and romance, there is a glimmer of a real man, a powerful Romano-British warrior, a Dux Bellorum named Artorius, who in the darkest of times, led a courageous defense of his homeland. He was so successful, so heroic, that his name was never forgotten. His memory was kept alive in campfire stories and bardic songs for centuries. A spark of hope in a dark age. Over time, that spark was fanned into a flame, and then a bonfire of legend, with each generation adding its own hopes, fears, and ideals to his story. The historical Arthur was a man of his time, a 6th century warlord. The legendary Arthur is a man for all time, a symbol of justice, leadership, and the eternal hope that even in our darkest hour, a hero will rise. The search for Arthur isn't just about finding a person, it's about understanding how history becomes a legend. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through myth and history. If you enjoyed unraveling this ancient mystery, please hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the past, and let me know in the comments which historical legend you'd like me to investigate next. See you in the next video.